So I want to talk about 3 illustrations that are very effective when witnessing. The first is the illustration of the courtroom. It illustrates Christ dying on the cross. So when someone doesn't really understand it, or maybe you might even throw the illustration in your initial conversation, you can say, imagine if you had a $50,000 fine and you were in a court of law and you had to pay the $50,000 or you were about to go to jail. But someone you didn't even know walked into the courtroom, handed you $50,000, you took it from them and gave it to the judge. Justice is satisfied, even though it wasn't your money and you didn't deserve it. But you walk out of the courtroom completely free. That's what Jesus Christ did on the cross. Another good illustration is when someone says, I'm a good person, so I deserve everlasting life. You can say something like, imagine if someone had murdered another person and they went to court and they were found guilty of that murder. And they confessed the murder. They said, yes, judge, I did murder that person, but I've done so much good in my life. I've given to the poor. I've worked for charities. I've been good to my mom. They come up with all of these different things that they've done in their life to try to compensate for the fact they murdered that person. Would a just judge let them go because they had done good? Of course not. And so it is with God. Justice must be satisfied despite the good we've done in our life. And God will find us guilty unless we've paid for our crime. Another illustration is sort of going back to the first illustration we had, where you can illustrate Jesus having to come to earth. And you could say something like this. Imagine if you were hiking in the woods with a group of friends and you saw this beautiful anthill ahead of your group. And these ants had spent a lot of time and it was wonderful. You could tell they had really worked hard. And your friend in front of you just steps right on the anthill and destroys the whole thing. Now, if you wanted to rebuild the anthill, could you do it? Of course not, because you're too big. To fix the anthill, you would have to become an ant. And so it was with God. He looked down upon a world that was destroyed, but in order to fix it, he had to become a man, just like you would have to become an ant to fix an anthill. Another illustration is when someone is skeptical about creation and believes in evolution. You could use the illustration of a builder having to have a builder, or a painting having to have a painter. Say something like this. Imagine if I told you that this beautiful building was created through a mass explosion that took place in that field over there, and all these pieces of wood and rock and dirt fell together and created this beautiful building. Would you believe me? Of course not. But we're told that we're supposed to believe that the human eye, which is far more complex than this building, the human eye, which contains 40 million nerve endings, is a result of some mass explosion. That doesn't make sense.